Hello, and welcome to a new edition of Need to Know, a series of video interviews with companies who are shaping, creating, and innovating in the games industry today, and whose work will have a huge impact going forwards into the future. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Alistair Hutson, Head of Partnerships at Equals Money, here to talk to us today about international payments and banking, and what it might be that games businesses are missing out on. Before we get going, Alistair, it's lovely to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Would you like to tell our viewers a little bit about your background and what it is that you do at Equals Money?
Of course. Yeah, absolute pleasure to be here, Leo. So I'm Alistair. I look after our partnership channels at Equals. So by partnership channels, I mean our network of resellers or introducers or affiliates that bring us business. Some of those are very simple operations like accountants and law firms. And we also work with trade associations and trade bodies that help us get access to prospective customers. And in terms of what Equals does and who we are, we started out in early 2000s under the FairFX brand. Some of you may have used that. It was a travel card. I say was, it still is a travel card for holiday makers to have a prepaid MasterCard that they can use overseas in dollars and euros and other currencies, rather than taking big wads of cash with them in a bum bag that may or may not get stolen. That space, as some of you may know, became ultra competitive with the rise of neobanks like Revolut and Wise, who used it as a product to mass market to retail customers. So we maintained that product; it's still there, and we rebranded as Equals Money. Equals Money was our B2B proposition, where we took that technology alongside payment technology and went after UK and European businesses that were conducting most of their banking business through high street banks, your HSBCs, your NatWests, and were typically being underserviced, overcharged and underloved. So Equals Money is a business, if you summarize what we do, we're a regulated payment business, so we're governed heavily by the Financial Conduct Authority, and we help businesses manage payment components, whether that's domestic or international, as well as allowing them to issue prepaid debit cards to their staff for expense management, whether they be traveling to events or traveling overseas, booking flights, booking hotels, and that kind of activity.
Wonderful. No, that's really, really good to understand. I mean, as well, it would be sort of interesting to sort of hear a little bit about your customer base, and perhaps you can sort of talk about different kinds of customers that you service and look after.
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned about the banking piece. So we typically go fishing in that space where businesses feel like they are not getting the appropriate service or products from their banks. That's a very, very easy place for us to start. From an industry perspective, we work with many industries, from financial services through to legal, engineering, manufacturers, education. You'd be surprised if a business is making some form of payment, either it be domestic payroll or it could be paying overseas contractors or repatriating to overseas revenue. There's a business case for us to speak to them. So we haven't targeted any specific vertical and built a business around it. We've gone out with a blank canvas to try and help anyone that we can. And our motto at Equals is to make the movement of money simple. And again, you could be a large enterprise customer, or you could be a very recent startup that has challenges with acquiring a bank account and managing the business costs that go with the setup of that.
Absolutely. I think it's especially interesting for the games industry here, given, I suppose, the global reach, both from a sort of consumer perspective, selling games to customers all over the world in different territories, but also from a sort of business perspective too, doing business in foreign markets, and equally in terms of outsourcing development, companies entering into co-development agreements with companies based in different countries, or paying remote workers overseas. All of these things are obviously super important for us to consider here. I think it'd be really helpful for our audience to sort of understand some of the solutions that Equals Money is essentially sort of bringing to the table.
some really good examples in there. One of the very common use cases is the payment of overseas staff. You mentioned developers and people involved in the creation of your products. Very likely they could be based overseas, as well as in the UK. So you've got a raw cost of paying those staff, which from an FD or a CFO perspective, will have an impact on the gross profitability of a game. If a currency changes in value, of which we've seen lots recently with the tariff wars, it can increase the cost of that labor. So we have ways that we can help businesses hedge the currency exposure for specific time periods, which gives them certainty. You've then got the piece around overseas revenue, which is again really, really common. A lot of UK businesses sell their products into Europe, Americas, and other parts of the world. And in order to do that, you have to be able to offer some form of local collection or banking facility. I.e., if you sold a game to France and you're expecting a French customer to pay their money into a NatWest account in the UK, there is going to be some sort of challenge around that. And if it's not looked after properly, two things will happen. The remitter will delay the payment because they're not sure what to do with an account number and sort code. They've never seen it before. Or secondly, they will send euros into a sterling account, of which the bank will convert it at what we would call tourist rates. So you could see a fairly hefty deduction in the value, could be anywhere between 5 and 7.5%. Which again, if you're running a business with relatively thin margins, to lose 7.5% on an exchange that you had no control over, and it's avoidable, is something that we really want to help with. And then from an expansion perspective, Equals has been in the business of international business for a long, long time. So we're very well versed in the various potential pitfalls and do's and don'ts of operating in specific markets. And each customer we work with has a relationship manager, someone who will understand what the business does, how they can assist you from a product perspective. And it might be that we can connect you with someone in our ecosystem that can help with legal or HR matters, or formation business in a specific region. The kind of things that the traditional banks in the UK just don't have the capacity to service you with. They struggle to look after you if you're on their patch in the UK. So it's really trying to help these businesses grow, but more importantly, understanding what it is they do and where they need us to help them in that direction.
Absolutely, and you mentioned as well from the outset, sort of prepaid credit cards or debit cards as well. I mean, obviously, there's an awful lot of international events that take place all over the world within the games industry. Things like GDC, Gamescom in Cologne. That must be a helpful element as well.
It is, absolutely. So I mentioned FairFX, our founding brand. So we've had a very, very long relationship with MasterCard, and one of our core components of the business account is to allow staff to have access to prepaid multi-currency cards. Now, if like myself and probably many others that will be watching this, managing expenses can be a real painful experience. Often it's done out of pocket, and then there's a reclaim process, and managers are unsure if the reclaim process is within policy, and it can take a long time for employees to get their funds back. So from a business perspective, being able to give your staff cards, those cards have very specific controls in place that allow employees to request a top up. The top up goes through the approval channels, and then you move money from your business account onto the card, and then you allow them to use it. So travel is a really, really key vertical for us. We've actually just finished integrating our card product into SAP Concur, which again, some of you may have used. SAP Concur manage expenditure and spend for businesses to help them understand the data around, last month we might have spent more money traveling to France, or we might have spent more money on food in the UK, and make better decisions around those. But they need a card provider, which is where we come in. So integrations is another topic that we can perhaps cover later on. But as you mentioned, overseas events is a brilliant case of needing to get a handle on those costs. You're likely paying for perhaps a stand at an event, which is a fixed cost. Then you've got sending 5 people out there as well, flights, hotels, food, and everything else that goes with it. So yeah, managing those through the platform is again something that we offer, and a really, really great product, particularly for startups where budgets are tight. They haven't got the luxury of being able to lean on generous T&E or travel and expense budgets. We can help them control that in a more secure manner.
Absolutely, definitely making things like that a lot easier to manage is helpful, and also, like you were saying, helps with being able to analyze this for sort of future reference, I suppose. Okay, interesting. Well, I think it'd be really, really helpful as well to sort of maybe get a little bit of your insight into some of the trends that you're detecting within the game sector at the moment, from your perspective.
Absolutely. So it comes full circle to the start around the banking appetite. So in the UK, again, some of you may have experienced this directly through your own companies or through prior engagements. UK banks are struggling to service their core customer book, and they are offboarding businesses based on a number of factors. One of those factors is a risk score or a risk profile, and we're seeing more and more businesses that operate in medium or high risk industries being debanked by their current provider. And gaming as an industry for certain banks will be put into one bracket. So that could cover gambling, could cover the acceptance of money through an app or through a mobile game. The banks don't really, in all honesty, spend a great deal of time worrying about who's in that bucket of gaming. It's easier for them to paint a box and fit everyone into it, and therefore there is a very strong likelihood, if you're a startup business and you're operating in the gaming space, that the banks may look at you and decide not to service you with banking, which can make it really, really difficult if you need to pay staff, or as I mentioned, you're starting to work in overseas territories and you need access to a euro account or a dollar account, which is something that we offer. It can really slow down your growth and trajectory. So that for me is definitely the kind of main focus at the moment, and it's in reality why businesses like Equals Money exist. We aren't a bank. We don't have a banking license, and we've got no ambition to have a banking license. We sit in that space where we allow someone to leverage our payment capabilities and our payment licenses to fill the gaps that the banks have left. And it's not just the gaming industry; it's others as well. So the travel sector is a great one. We've had customers come to us who've been with tier one banks for 20, 30 years. They offer a travel agent style service. Travel for banking is a high risk industry because of the risk of things like customer cancellations and the exposure to foreign exchange risk. It's easier for the banks to say no. So you've got very well established businesses offering a very straightforward product, which is helping people go on holiday. And the bank has no interest in servicing them anymore. Too complex or too high risk, which is a real shame. So that for me is a really key, it's a really key trend, and I don't see it getting any better. In all honesty.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting. It's really interesting. Obviously, you know, the nature of games industry and the games businesses, things are always changing quite quickly, quite dramatically. Obviously, more recently, mobile gaming has opened up a whole load of an awful lot of sort of small payments spread across the entire world. So yeah, I can completely understand that. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, interesting. So in terms of where you see sort of the payment space heading, what should we be looking out for as a games industry then?
So I briefly mentioned, excuse me, SAP Concur. So integrations is is where the payment space is heading. You will have heard buzzwords like embedded finance and other integration style conversations, so that they're popping up a lot more now. So I'll just give you an example. We integrate into Xero from an accounting perspective. If a business is using our payment platform to pay suppliers, pay staff, pay anyone on their books, there is transaction or data that's being collected. If they're working with an accountant, they need the accountant to have that information so that they can square off their books in a timely fashion. The old school way of doing it would be that you create the accountant as a role on your platform and you give them a login on a read only or a view only style permission, and then they go in and take all that data. The clever way to do it, or the simple way to do it, is to build an integration into Xero, which is what we've done. So at the end of each day, the Equals platform for that specific client will take all of the data from Equals and put it into Xero and allow them to reconcile their books. So it's a double-edged sword. The accountant has a much easier time. Also allows us to leverage accountants as resellers. I mentioned them as partners. So our product's very well liked in the accountancy space. They will go out to their customers and say, hey, Mr. Customer, can't help but notice you're making lots of payments to Poland or to Bulgaria, or you're receiving US dollars. It's going through the bank, or you're also spending a fortune on company credit cards to travel to foreign events and everything else. There's a better way to do it. So they will introduce the client to equals, but their actual sell will be the zero piece. So they'll say, whilst it's great that you can use equals, and I'm sure you'll have a brilliant experience with them, it's going to make my life easier because I have all the data that I need, and it's going to come to me through an API. And that's why we built out the integration with Concur. Again, more and more companies that were trying to manage their travel and expenses were using banking corporate cards or credit cards, which are really expensive. And we figured out a way to help get that data into someone like Concur. And we're working on a few others at the moment. So in terms of where the payment space is heading, it's all about integrations. Companies want to be able to have multiple systems. They want to be able to have a NatWest or an HSBC, and equals, whoever else it might be, but they want all that data to sit usually in one place and have access to it at any one time. So yeah, really, really exciting. Similar with open banking. Some of you on the video watching this will recognize open banking from a collection perspective. That concept started or was born through this integration concept, allowing me to connect my nationwide bank to, I'll use an example, someone like Snoop, which helps you identify trends in your spending. It's a very simplified integration concept that's almost revolutionized the way that we share banking data. So that will probably be my second trend to keep an eye on, particularly those that are collecting customer payments and have been paying a lot through acquirers to process those payments. There are cheaper alternatives pushing their way into the market that the FCA are closely watching to make sure it's done properly.
Fantastic. No, that's really, really helpful to understand. I think lots to consider there ultimately, and also an awful lot to sort of to support business within the games industry. So yeah, thank you so much. Well, yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Alistair. I really appreciate your time today. It's been really interesting. Lots to consider. I'll pop your details down at the bottom of the screen so everyone can get in touch with you. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Leo.
No worries. And thank you as well to our audience who tuned in to catch this video. There's plenty of other need-to-know videos out there on our Ukie TV channel on YouTube. Thank you for enjoying this one, and more very soon. Thank you so much.